We had an individual that went into the house, abducted Nancy Guthrie, and we also had blood that was on the front porch. I want to say we had a blood trail that led from inside of the house to the front porch. So it's clear that there was a level of violence attached to this.
I have a special guest for you. One of my good friends, Dr. Darren Porcher, retired New York City Police Lieutenant. I worked with him in the field. We were in the academy together. I've known him for over 30 years. He is on location out front of Nancy Guthrie's home. Darren.
Thanks for having me, Ron. Okay, let's go to the beginning of this case. When we start this off, we had a situation whereas Nancy was dropped off at her house by one of her relatives. And after being dropped off at the house by one of her relatives, uh, she was in the house for a period of time, and there was an abduction that occurred. We all saw the video as it related to the assailant at the front door that was wearing the black gloves, the ski mask, the backpack, a holster, attempting to get into the house from the front door. That's only a 20-second video. The video doesn't show you where the entry was made. And it's very a unique situation in terms of the video because the Nest cameras that were in the house were not active because she no longer had a subscription.
Right.
And what Google did, because Google is the parent company of Nest, they had a contingent of engineers that what made this such a challenge is because since there was no subscription, it was now in code. It was in a coded language. So the engineers had to reformat that code and configure this into a digital format in video. It was very challenging. The odds were against them, but they were successful. They got it done. That being said, we got the 20-second video, and what it shows you is it shows you a backpack, uh, and it shows you a backpack, it shows you the mask, it shows you sneakers, and it shows you a holster. The backpack, which is an Ozark Trail backpack, is something that's sold at Walmart. The holster is is a strategy brand holster that's also sold at Walmart. Now, what happens with why this is important is because the investigators are going to want to connect with the law enforcement component within Walmart to find out when these items were sold. Now, many people will say, "Hey, look, if cash is used, it's not trackable." That's not true because whenever you make a purchase at Walmart, the item is entered into a system. So on that same transaction would have both the strategy holster and the Ozark Trail backpack in the same on the same receipt. So what law enforcement would do in a situation like that is they would go to the video and find out when that person made the purchase. One of the things that people question is, was the intent an abduction? Was it a burglary that went bad? That's something that we don't know. But the one thing I can tell you is this. When we look at this, I personally believe that this is a home invasion. And when we speak to home invasions or burglaries, there's when we speak to burglaries, there's two factions that you want to look into. One, we have a daytime burglar and we have a nighttime burglar, two totally different skill sets. The daytime burglar would be someone that actually conducts a level of surveillance at the location to see if there's no one there, and then they'll enter the residence, they'll take what they want, and then they'll leave. There's no intent on embarking upon a campaign of violence. And I give you an example. We've seen a lot of these celebrities, such as Patrick Mahomes, singers, etc., in Los Angeles, that have had their homes burglarized when they were on tour, doing shows, etc. Now, the nighttime burglar is very different. The nighttime burglar is a person that understands that the propensity exists for there to be an individual in the house, and that nighttime burglar is willing to use force. In addition to that, Nancy had an Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch was aligned with her pacemaker. And so during that 2 a.m. hour, the Apple Watch was disconnected from the pacemaker, and we believe that is the point of time when the abduction occurred. Now, we only had the one individual that was on camera, but the FBI is working to try to do the same thing as it relates to the what was done with the Google engineers to reformat what was erased based on the data with the unsubscribed information on the Nest cameras. This is an arduous task. The first transformation of video happened in 9 days. It took them a long time.
Hmm.
The second, which is going to focus on the cameras that are on the interior of the house, is still ongoing. They haven't had success with this, but they're working on it. So another piece to that is this. I want to say the ground here is referred to as hard pack. Okay, a lot of people will say, well, hey, why don't you have a tire? Do you have tire prints? Do you have footprints? And the answer is no, because this hard pack is very densely compressed sand, and you're just not going to be able to get a footprint, nor will you be able to get tire prints off of this landscape here. Once you leave the pathway from Nancy's house and you get to this roadway, this is basically an asphalt surface. It's a
Right.
hard surface, but in addition to that, Nancy weighed roughly 150 pounds. So it was impossible for the assailant to remove her on his own and bring her outside of and bring her outside. So he had to have assistance. In addition to that, he had to have a vehicle. So we don't know where the vehicle pulled in, because I just want to pan around and show you what the neighborhood looks like. You don't have surveillance cameras. I mean, there's a ton of media here, don't get me wrong. But at
Right.
the same token, you do not have surveillance cameras. You're going to have to go a distance before you get to surveillance cameras. So haven't captured video to support if there was a vehicle, who the co-conspirators are. So as we move forward in the investigation, there's one of the things that the investigators are looking to do is embark upon something we refer to as geofencing.
Mm.
Geofencing is when you set it's a perimeter that's set up to extract all of the cell phone information in a particular area. This is important because to dump a cell phone tower takes a lot. There's a lot involved in that. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. But however, we're able to pinpoint the time in which we believe the abduction occurred, which was in the 2 a.m. hour. So when you look at an area such as this during the 2 a.m. hour, you're going to have very limited cell phone traffic at that particular time. That works to the advantage of law enforcement. So as we fast forward, there's been three separate instances of detainment. We had the first instance of detainment involved an Amazon delivery person that was taken into custody 60 miles away from here in an area, a city called Rio Rico,
Mhm.
which is just short of the Mexican border. They took him into custody, and the belief of why he was taken into custody is based on, as what I mentioned earlier, the geofencing. The geofencing was able to capture his cell phone signal at this particular location. That's why they detained him, but they found out that he was not a suspect, so they let him go. We fast forward, and now we move to what happened just yesterday, whereas we had two separate apprehensions. We had the first apprehension that consisted of two males and a mother, which is approximately 2 miles away from here. It's not that far. So I want to say it's an 8-minute drive. It took me 8 minutes to drive from here to the location where these individuals were apprehended in a
This is
search
last
warrant.
night. This is last night, right, Darren?
Yes,
Okay.
they were detained and they were set free. The second apprehension happened at a place called Culver's, which is a fast food restaurant relatively close to here, and that's the parking lot where you see the gray Range Rover.
Hey guys, if you like this type of perspective, Dr. Darren, great friend of mine. Again, I've known him for over 30 years. And this is the description. He was fast forwarding from the beginning to this spot right here, where they had this Range Rover in FBI custody. It looked like they were looking for something in the back of this Range Rover. Yellow tarp was being held up by the sheriff's department.
We have the gray Range Rover, and the FBI conducted the stop of this vehicle. They set up a series of tarps, and I wasn't sure as to why that was done, because the first thing I think of is, were they looking to cover the identity of the individual, or were they looking to mask the content that was removed from the vehicle? I couldn't give you a clear answer on that. But just as the first group of people, the two males and the mother, were detained and released, the same held true with the Range Rover. And as it relates to the Range Rover, now we're still in a place where we're trying to figure this out, because just my hypothesis on this was, I believe that the Range Rover was possibly a vehicle that was used to remove Nancy Guthrie from the scene. And that's kind of where we are with this thing. I think we're at the beginning of the investigation, and the investigational path is going to continue to move forward. But I genuinely believe that this was a burglary that went wrong, and the intent was not for this to be a kidnapping. The most people will say, "Hey, look, burglars do not remove people," and that's true. I think that this was a situation where the burglar panicked, and that's when he removed the body, because, or I should say, Nancy Guthrie, because he didn't want her to be found by police. And I genuinely believe that she's no longer here with us, because she takes heart medication, and she needs to have that heart medication within 24 hours, and that heart medication is not with her. This is an 84-year-old woman in challenging health. We're doing the best that we can in law enforcement to try to find her, but it just seems like we're coming up on a lot of dead ends, and I think it's somewhat of an embarrassment for law enforcement to stop a total of five different people on three different occasions, and have these individuals released. And it begs the question of, what is the investigational process?
What I was asking you is about the crime scene. You're a retired NYPD lieutenant. You have your officers who come up to a scene, and there's blood right on the front doorstep. The family called 911 and said, "There's blood on my mother's doorstep." Are you releasing that crime scene even after it was processed?
The best way to describe this is that is this: the crime scene was clearly released too early, and there's a lot of points of contention with that, because look at where we are. I'm in Pena County, and they have a professional police department here. And it's ironic, this is not Tucson. Everyone speaks to Tucson, but the Tucson PD and the Pena County Sheriff's Office are two different departments.
Right.
Pena County is handling this, not the Tucson PD. But as it relates to the blood on the stairs, not the stairs, in the front of the house, I believe that they released the crime scene too early, and it kind of bit them in the wrong way. And secondly, the FBI came in. Many people make the argument of, why didn't you have the FBI sooner, once it was perceived to be an abduction slash kidnapping? And I think that they were just trying to corroborate this as best as possible before they went to the FBI. They wanted to be sure or guaranteed that this, in fact, was a kidnapping, as opposed to something that was localized. But these things happen in law enforcement. Do we make mistakes? Sure, we
I
do.
agree 100%. And there's all different possibilities of where none of us are in the head of Sheriff at the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Nanos, not a great speaker, and we're aware of that. They stopped the press conferences. But at the end of the day, I mean, look, it's better to be safe than sorry. And holding a crime scene with one sheriff's vehicle out in front of that driveway wouldn't have hurt anything. They're a 550 member department.
There's a Pena County Sheriff's vehicle that's positioned in front of the house. I want to show you behind me. This is, I don't know if you could see, but like pitch black over there. My hotel is in close proximity. That's My hotel is behind me. But I totally agree with you as it relates to, they could have done things better. And we always have an after action review in policing to find out what we can do better. And this is one of those things that was a lot for a smaller department to handle.
Have you ever seen search warrants executed with no arrest times two? We saw this twice now. We saw the major operation that went on last night and then the first one.
It's three. Because remember, we had the first one in Rio Rico, second one, a house that's 2 miles away from, and none of them have been arrested.
You're outside your hotel. So I want you to get some rest. And Darren, I appreciate the perspective. You really provided a lot for the audience right outside of the home. I can't thank you enough for doing that. Thank you, my friend.
Love you, Ron. Love your listeners. Doing what you're doing, getting the word out there. That's the real word, not something that's fabricated.